Well, now we have 11 people. So let's wait for 8 sharp.
Yeah, might as well.
So I guess I'm ready, David.
Okay, go ahead, Ioana.
Wait, what do I do? Hi, everyone. Can the attendees hear me?
Let's just assume everyone can hear, because I don't think they can respond unless it's by text or raising their hand, and then we unmute them. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Begin when you're ready.
Okay. So, hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar for the month of May. My name is Ioana, and I'm a med school student at Laval. Oh, and you guys can hear me, so that's cool. And so tonight we have super webinar about the pathways that our graduating class, our first graduating class took. And we have 4 panelists. We have Cassandra, we have Terry, Lance, and Julie. And I guess I'll let them introduce themselves when the time comes. I just want to congratulate the new leaders if we have any new 2016 leaders amongst us. That's very nice, and congratulations if you are a new leader. And what's very cool about tonight is that we're covering a large span of Canada, because we have students from BC, and we have Terry that is in Quebec City, and Julie that is from Montreal at McGill. The leader talks are basically designed to be a series that connects us as leaders and that inspires us, gives us ideas for our next project. So there are many of us, many Schulich leaders, and it's hard to keep track of everyone's accomplishments and what everyone is doing. We have a few ways of connecting with each other. We have, for instance, the blog posts, and we also have the meetings that we do sometimes once a semester, I think, or once a year. But the webinars are a new way and a great way to just discuss with other leaders to see what they did to get to the point where they are now. And so tonight, the way we're going to go about the webinar, we're going to hear each panelist introduce themselves and present their CV, what they did to win the scholarship, how their studies went, and what the future holds for them. So we have Cassandra, Terry, Lance, and Julie. And then there's going to be a question period at the end of the webinar, and I will invite you to either raise your hand. There's a little hand icon down on the left, if you see it. So when we get to that point, we will just proceed by hand raising, or you can send your questions via chat, and I'll direct the question to the person that is best, that has the best tools to answer it, or you can target anyone specifically. So without further ado, I will let Cassandra, who studied at UBC and is graduating in December with a degree in conservation biology, present herself and what she did.
Okay, so yeah, as Ioana said, I've been studying at UBC for the past 4 years in honors conservation biology, but it was a difficult decision for me initially in first year and second year to decide exactly what I wanted to study, although I knew I loved being outside and I also loved mathematics, but these two things are hard to combine. So back in 2011, before I got the Schulich Scholarship, I got the opportunity to go to the Arctic with a group called Students on Ice. And I fell in love with like Arctic and Alpine regions. And I got involved with this group called the Youth Arctic Coalition. And they were writing policy and scientific papers describing Indigenous rights and also problems to do with climate change. And I've been involved with this group basically since 2011, but it also taught me that there's more sides to things than just seeing it from a theoretical science point of view. So in first year, I was in a program called Science 1, and this program integrated all of the different sciences, so physics, biology, chemistry, and math, together and tried to create like an integrated perspective, but it was all very much based on theory. And in the summer after first year, I got the opportunity to go to Costa Rica. And this trip really changed my opinions and ideas about science because I was living on a beach with a man who'd lived off the land for the last 10 years. And he gave me a very interesting, you can see him here holding a snake, and he had a very different view of science and conservation than I had ever experienced because I was around people who thought about the theory behind these ideas and much less about the kind of grassroots on the ground ideas. So this really changed me, and when I came back to UBC in the fall, I had all these ideas that I didn't want to just study the theory. I wanted to be able to be on the ground talking to people and incorporate Indigenous ideas into projects. So initially I was in mathematics and trying to do a small bit of biology, but quickly I realized that this was far too much. This would lead to sitting in an office doing a lot of work like that. So I ended up switching into honors conservation biology, which was sort of a perfect combination because it allowed me to do a lot of mathematics but also go out in the field. And one of the groups I got to do a lot of work with was the Varsity Outdoors Club. We built huts, I learned to ski, and I've led lots of people on trips showing them all sorts of amazing places in the backcountry. So this was a great opportunity to not just be sitting in my room studying all the time. And so then after second year, I had a bit more experience in the field now, and I got the opportunity to go and work on Ellesmere Island, which is the northernmost island in Canada. You can see it here right next to Greenland. And we were basically studying plants, trying to understand how, as temperatures rise in these areas, they're going up by like 3 to 6 degrees Celsius, how this is going to affect plants like the dryas flowers you can see here. And so, but it wasn't just the science either when we were here. There's so much camp management. We had to deal with polar bears walking into our camp, and you fly into the ice on a seaplane. So it's a very, very different world, and you're working with only 4 other people for the entire summer, and you don't see anyone else. And it's very, very different, but beautiful. And so doing this, I learned a lot about science, but also a lot about field work and managing a team. So this was wonderful. And I've spent the last 2 summers doing that, and I'm going back again on Thursday, actually, for the next 3 months. And basically, this experience taught me that I was really interested in Arctic ecosystems. But for my honors thesis, I've been working on mathematical modeling of these ecosystems, trying to remove noise from biological data sets. And it's the technique I've come up with, and I'm hoping to publish a paper on it this summer, basically works something like this. You know that there's a signal under the data, and so when you're going out and sampling an ecosystem or any biological system, you know that there is some signal in the data. But when you actually go out to sample it, the temperature sensors fail, all sorts of problems happen, and so your data actually looks something like this. And you can still see that there's the colorful signal that's there, but it's much harder to measure. And when you run it through this program that I've written, it can re-pull out the signal, and it'll tell you how accurate it is for pulling out the actual signal too. So this is something I'm quite excited about, and I want to carry on with that going into graduate school the following September. So, and this is one of the things that I discovered, was that the temperatures have gone up by almost 3 degrees Celsius since 1980 at Alexander Fjord on Ellesmere Island, which is a huge increase in temperature for 30 years. So, yeah. And basically, I'd like to say how much the Schulich Leaders Scholarship has meant to me too, because without this, I probably wouldn't have gotten the opportunities to go and work in these remote places. It was a very competitive process for both these jobs, I think, and having a scholarship and also having the time in the summer to learn about these different techniques really made a huge difference instead of working at a fast food restaurant or something like that.
Thank you very much, Cassandra. I think our next panelist is Terry. If Terry can speak or not, we may go ahead with plan. Let's go ahead with Terry.
Could you pass me the ball? Oh, okay, good. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, you're good.
Let's just, there we go. Okay, well, hello everyone. Thanks for the introduction. So my name is Terry Blaskovits. I'm a student in chemistry at Laval University, and I just completed my undergraduate degree 3 weeks ago. So to begin here, just to give an overview of where I'm from, I grew up in northern British Columbia in a town called Dawson Creek. I made the effort to find the most stereotypical stock photos I could find of each of these places. So I grew up in Dawson Creek, small town. Then I moved to Edmonton when I was 14 years old to attend high school there. I was in French immersion from a very early age, from preschool. I was also, well, I still am a violinist and a pianist, and I learned around high school age that living in a small town didn't give me all the opportunities to continue learning French and to continue developing a musical interest. So I ended up moving to Edmonton and did all my high school there. And then I began my studies 4 years ago in chemistry at Laval. And when people ask me why did I choose Laval, the main reasons are, well, French immersion. As I said, I did all my studies in French and was very eager to continue learning French. I found that being bilingual had given me so many opportunities and opened so many doors already in my life, even before going into the workplace. And it was definitely something I didn't want to lose. And I found Quebec City is, well, one of the most francophone cities in the country, and a unilingual francophone university as well. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but I did the Shad Valley program back in 2011 at Laval, and when I was there, I fell in love with the city and the university. And then, so following those two things, I ended up applying for the university and got the Schulich scholarship, which sort of sealed the deal for me. So after my first year of chemistry, I sort of started out along a similar path as Cassandra. I knew from a very early age. I grew up in the northern Rocky Mountains, spent my summers hiking with my family, my friends, backpacking, all that. And I knew that I wanted to do something, you know, environmentally based. And how did I say this? I had the feeling at when I was younger, that doing something environmental would involve, you know, being out in the mountains or in the Arctic, as Cassandra was saying, you know, taking samples of things, taking pictures, all that. And so that's what I did for one summer. I worked as a research assistant in land reclamation at the University of Alberta. And that's just what I did. And the lower right-hand picture was during a research trip in Waterton Lakes National Park. We also traveled extensively through the grasslands and badlands of southern Alberta. And I also went to the Arctic and worked at the Diavik Diamond Mine in the Northwest Territories. So it's not quite as high Arctic as Ellesmere Island, but still it was an incredible landscape, an incredible experience. And yet I found over the course of the summer I spent doing just what I thought I'd love doing, I found myself becoming very unhappy because I felt as if a lot of a lot of environmental research linked to biology or botany or ecology, things like that, are very much focused on the issues. What's, for example, as Cassandra said, identifying temperature rise or changes in species habitat. I'm very unhappy just focusing on the problems associated with the human relationship with the environment. And so I decided in the end that I wanted to focus more on working on solutions to some of these issues, even if it meant sacrificing having a career in the great outdoors. And so with that in mind, I started doing internships, a total of 3 internships in chemistry, all of them at Laval. The first one I worked in analytical chemistry. This was my summer after second year. And I worked on developing a method of identifying uranium in drinking water, for example, from artesian wells. And then after during my third year of university, I did an internship in organometallic chemistry. And I won't go into detail about that, but I was working with a group that developed metal-free catalytic systems for transformations in organic chemistry. So it also had an environmental inclination, although much less direct than if I were actually, up in the mountains or in the woods or something. I just wanted to mention too that I put the symbol of the NSERC at the bottom because I'm sure many of you are either planning on doing or would like to do internships at some point, and I'd highly recommend to all of you, if you are doing academic internships, to apply for NSERC grants. And then also my third year, I sort of had the undergraduate student's dream of going on an exchange in Europe, and so I had a lot of fun. I was at the University of Strasbourg, and I traveled to Italy, to Rome. I went hiking in England. I went to the Netherlands and Belgium, and also to Germany. And that was lots of fun, but by far the 2 most important things that I discovered during my exchange was seeing a different approach to research and to scientific problems, such as that at the University of Strasbourg. I think it was very enriching for me to see how scientists from a different country, different culture approach scientific issues and ideas, and a pedagogy as well. So the experience at the university was quite amazing. And the other discovery for me during my exchange in Europe was I met for the first time my extended family in Austria and Switzerland. In the lower right-hand corner is a picture of 2 of my cousins in Vienna, whom I visited, and it was a very unique experience as someone who'd never left the country before, to go to Europe and meet family members, some of whom only speak German and Croatian. And I wanted to mention this because maybe Ioana will be able to corroborate this, but I find in Quebec the Schulich Leaders Scholarship isn't very well known, and I can't say that it has helped with other applications for internships or jobs or things like that. But one thing it really did help me with was to make it possible for me to go on my exchange, because since I'm not a Quebec resident, since I grew up in BC, I didn't have access to provincial government funding to go on an exchange. So that's one thing I'm very thankful for over the course of my undergraduate degree. And just to 2 more slides to finish up, as I'm sure the same for all of you, extracurricular activities are very important for me. In fact, I found the word extracurricular actually sort of derogatory, because it sort of implies just something you do with your free time, and yet for me, I think it's just as important, if not more important, for who I am than working in a chemistry lab day to day. So I'm also a long distance runner, and I've been running for years, and I always return home to BC and run races with my family and friends. I've also continued playing the violin and piano, and I play in the Orchestre Symphonique de Lévis, which is a symphony orchestra in a city just across the St. Lawrence River from Quebec. When I was in France, I played in the University Orchestra in Strasbourg. In my first year of university, I volunteered with Frontier College, helping young people with learning difficulties. And the picture on the lower left is from every spring break, I go and visit a family friend in southern Ontario and help make maple syrup during the syrup season. And that's a fun way to get away from studying, but at the same time see a non-academic approach to science, which is the science of trees and the life cycle of trees, which is very fun as well. And so now, just 2 weeks ago, I started my master's degree, and polymer chemistry here at Laval, and that all started in my third internship during my undergraduate degree. And what I did then and what I'm doing now is developing new polymerization methods to make materials which can be used in organic solar cells. So the advantage of organic-based solar cells rather than inorganic ones is that they're a lot cheaper and flexible than, for example, traditional silicone-based solar cells, and so they can be prepared using traditional printing press technology. And so that's a way where I'm able to keep my inherent environmental values, but while at the same time studying my field of chemistry. So in the lower left-hand picture is of the research group I'm in now, and I'll be continuing my master's degree at Laval. But I've also just learned this last week that I'll be doing some of my master's at Harvard University next year as well. So that's a new experience, going to be a new opportunity for me, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'd just like to remind all of you, especially the new ones, that from all the opportunities I had during my undergraduate degree, yes, there's always an element of luck involved because it all depends on who you meet, where the opportunities come from. But the best way you can maximize these options, these opportunities, is really through the hard work that starts by studying on those long winter nights in front of your desk. So I just wanted to offer words of encouragement about that because we've all gone through it, and it pays off in the end. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Now I think we're going to go to Lance. Lance, who studied at University of Saskatchewan. Oh, and can you talk, Lance?
Yep. Can you see me?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Ioana. As Ioana said, I actually just graduated from the University of Saskatchewan with the degree in electrical engineering. And I'm actually, in September, I'm returning back to the University of Saskatchewan to pursue a master's degree in engineering. First off, a little bit about myself. I don't actually have a PowerPoint. I'm just going to wow you with my words. I actually just got in from Portland late last night, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. But right now, for the summer, I'm working an internship as well, just like all these other guys. I'm working at Vecima Networks. And what they do is they design and manufacture digital communication equipment. So this summer, I'm on a project dealing with creating a full duplex system for cable and internet television. So basically how the internet and television gets to your house. Right now, I guess in layman's terms, you can only transmit or receive at any one time, but I'm working on a project to make it so you can simultaneously transmit and receive, so you effectively double your bandwidth. And if we're successful, hopefully we won't have video problems like Terry was having earlier. We'll have a lot better internet speeds. But more importantly than where I'm at right now, I want to talk about how I got to where I'm at, and specifically some of the bigger decisions I made along the way, and some of my highlights of my university experience, and what I can recommend to some of the younger Schulich leaders out there. I started off, I grew up in Regina. I didn't move very far to go to Saskatoon for university, but as everyone here, I really like dealing with the math and science topics, and I loved calculus too much to not go into a scientific field, so engineering was a sure choice. And it was after first year to decide what discipline of engineering really you want to go into. And like I said, I graduated from electrical engineering, but originally I wanted to go into engineering physics, although I didn't really know a lot about either of them. And in first year university, I started becoming very involved. I joined a club called the USST, or University of Saskatchewan Space Design Team, and I didn't have a clue about really what they did. They ended up designing a robot is designed to be like a Mars rover and extract some of the kind of ground from Mars, which is essentially a prototype we made. And I didn't have a clue about robotics, but it kind of threw me into it, and a lot of the older students taught me a lot of stuff. And it was there that I realized, although engineering physics I was pretty interested in, I really wanted to do electrical engineering as a career. And it was actually on the very last day before we had to decide what discipline we want to go into, I changed my mind, or changed which one I checked off to electrical engineering, and that very much shaped my future because here I am today. And basically the big thing you take away from that is it's really important to get involved, or at least try things out in your first year of university to see what exactly you want to do. If I went to engineering physics, I'm sure I would have been happy with it, but I really like what I'm doing with electrical engineering, and hence I'm going into my master's degree. But there's really one really important thing that I want you all to take away from what I have to say today, and that's I know you've all heard it before, is to get really involved with your university, but I can't stress that enough. Over my 4 years, looking back to university, the things I remember, like it's not the classes I did or as much the parties I went to, but it was more so some of the extracurricular things, like Terry was saying, that I did throughout. One of my favorite ones was with engineering. There's engineering competition every year kind of throughout the country. There's different regions, like there's a Western engineering or Ontario, Quebec, etc. So of course, being out west, I competed in the Western engineering competition for 3 years, like second year, third year, fourth year. And actually in fourth year, my team, we got first place in the Western engineering competition and proceeded to go on to Quebec to compete in the Canadian engineering competition. So I was around Laval for a weekend. Amazing city, by the way, I have to say, and university. So just doing that kind of thing really opened doors. Unfortunately, we didn't win the Canadian engineering competition, but we had a lot of fun while we were there. And so it's that kind of thing that really makes university what it is, because you can't go to university just to get a degree, right? Everyone comes out with the same degree, and even good grades aren't really enough to set you apart. It's what else you do in university makes it a whole lot of fun and kind of sets you apart from everyone else. Also, another really big thing that I realized going through university is, like I said, if you're what helps you stand out isn't just your grades, but it's everything else. I made a point to become very involved, and not only just extracurricular, but actually networking events. Those are very important for meeting people and making contacts, which is huge. Even in the troubled economy in the West, I still had quite a few job offers this year, just because of meeting people at these events. But that's a little bit of what I did during university, but also I had a couple summer internships just like everyone else. Thanks to the Schulich Scholarship, I was able to actually take one internship with the university, since, as I'm sure some of you may know, the university pays like crap and isn't actually possible to work for otherwise. I did an internship with the computer science department after my second year at university, and it wasn't exactly electrical engineering based. My project was to develop a way of figuring out, there's a geological engineering experiment to figure out what materials are in the ground by sending some electric current through it. So I had to make a model of this, and there's certain errors associated with it. So I had to create a computer model of the whole system and inject the errors and see if we can figure out equations to find where the errors were happening. And after the summer, we were able to successfully do that, but what I learned from this is I do not want a career in research. It was definitely not my favorite thing in the world, doing this kind of research. Unlike Cassandra, I wasn't outside all the time. I was behind a desk, so that's something I realized. So that just goes to show that trying things out is probably the best way to figure out if you actually like it. Although in saying that, I did publish a paper on my findings that summer, which I'm sure helped win a scholarship for grad studies kind of somewhere down the line. So I mean, I'm definitely glad I did that. But looking towards my future now, I'm going to be going to grad studies, and I hope to be doing work with digital communication. Again, my internship with VESMA showed that I do really like what I'm doing, and I hope to be doing this for a long time. So if you guys can take anything away from me, it's that try things out, especially at the university. There's so many resources. You'd be crazy not to use these resources to your best ability. Figure out what you like, figure out what you don't, make some friends along the way, and graduate, hopefully get a good time like I did. So thank you, Ioana. I'll pass the talking stick back to you.
Thank you for the words of wisdom. And now let's go to Julie, who just graduated from McGill in chemical engineering. Hey guys. Okay, let me see if this works. There we are. Perfect. So hi guys, I'm Julie. I just graduated from McGill, like Ioana said, this May in chemical engineering, and I'm originally from Vancouver, and I'll actually be moving back to Vancouver this September to start as a medical student at UBC as part of the class of 2020.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I've been doing over the last 4 years, and how I sort of ended up on this weird path to medicine, I guess, which is a little bit weird coming from chemical engineering. I don't really have any good photos of me being a chemical engineer, so instead have a photo of me in New York eating food, which is what I do the rest of the time as I travel and eat. But my biggest advice to really anyone in university, entering university, anything like that, is to try a bit of everything. That really was my philosophy going in, because to be honest, when I started university, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even really know what chemical engineering was. But I just really wanted to get involved in my school, like everyone else has said. So for me, that meant being part of the Malaysian and Singaporean Students Association. I'm half Singaporean, but I didn't really know a lot about the culture. So that really allowed me to sort of get in touch with my heritage, but more importantly, I think, being an executive member and eventually president really showed me how to lead a team and to lead a team with cultural differences and bring people together in that way. I also played a role on the Chemical Engineering Student Society Council, and that's something I really encourage anyone who's maybe even thinking of getting involved to maybe try getting involved with your departmental society. It's really great because of the fact that you meet a bunch of people in your classes. So these are people that you see every day, who you're studying with, or doing group work with, or things like that. And also, at least in my capacity as a year up, I really got to get to know my profs as well. And I know, especially for those of you just entering university or who have just finished first year, professors can seem very terrifying, but they're actually really nice if you get to know them. And so being part of a departmental society really gives you sort of an excuse to go talk to them sort of under a different guise. I also tried my hand at research in chemical engineering. I had 2 research stints in polymers and hydrate morphology. From that, I learned that, to be honest, research isn't really my thing, but I think it really is a very valuable experience. It teaches you a lot about sort of discipline and looking for stuff yourself and really being independent, which I really enjoyed. But I think what was really important for me throughout my time at McGill in chemical engineering was to go outside of just chemical engineering itself. And this meant working with McGill Not-for-Profit Consulting Program. That's sort of a program where students provide management consulting services to nonprofits. And so management consulting is obviously business, very different from engineering, and that was quite scary for me because I didn't have any really big business experience, and so I was sort of going in fresh, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to contribute to something so outside my initial field. But honestly, I thought it turned out to be such a valuable experience. You learn a lot on the fly, and you learn that no matter if you don't have the proper training at first, training is easy to learn. It's whatever innate skill you bring, whatever problem solving you bring, whatever determination you bring, that's what really gets you through and helps you succeed. And also, something that's been really important to me over the last 4 years has been volunteering and giving back to the community. I volunteered at the McGill University Health Center for 4 years in various hospitals around Montreal, and that's been really nice because of the fact that it allows you to sort of get into the real community and sort of leave the university bubble. And I think especially as university students, you get sort of bogged down with, you know, worrying about grades and worrying about what you're doing for the summer. And it's really nice to sort of get out there and talk to people who aren't in school and who have other things going on with their lives, just to remind you that, you know, life exists outside university. And it's just really a great experience. So I highly recommend, you know, getting involved in your community outside of your university. One of the big experiences I want to talk about is what I've been doing for the last 2 summers, and those are actually internships in oilfield services in Alberta. So this is something I never thought I would do. Again, I'm from Vancouver. I didn't really have a lot of experience with oilfield work, and I was very much a city girl. But so being sort of stuck in an oil rig in the middle of nowhere, Alberta, was, you know, sort of, I was a little bit intimidated at first, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And as you can see from the picture to my left, you get very dirty very quickly into oil field, and what's going on? But what I found with something like that is just the importance of being eager and admitting when you don't know anything, and then being willing to learn from the people around you. I made great connections with the rest of my coworkers and other interns, and they really taught me a lot, and they sort of really adopted me into the fold because I was eager to learn, and I was eager to show that I could help in whatever way possible. So I think that was a really unique experience and something I thought really helpful. The picture on the right is actually from a sunrise at around 5 in the morning at the end of a 12-hour night shift. So admittedly, not the job for everyone, but I thought it was a great opportunity to really sort of learn how to learn. When you're sort of dropped into the middle of a situation you know nothing about, and you're dealing with a field you know nothing about, to sort of learn how to find your mentors and find people to take advice from, and then sort of become proactive in that way. It turns out at the end of the day that I wasn't really interested in doing employment in the oil field full time, and plus the oil crisis happened. So between those two things, I had pretty much tried research, I had tried management consulting, I tried working sort of in the oil and gas industry, and at the end of the day, I had sort of figured out over the last 4 years that my real passion really was for medicine. And it sounds weird. A lot of people gave me a lot of weird looks when I told them I was going to apply for medicine. But for me, it sort of made sense because engineering is applied science and medicine sort of applied science, but specifically with the intent of helping other people very concretely and directly. And that's something that really appealed to me. Over the last 4 years, I've been taking extra biology classes and volunteering at the hospital just to see how this career could potentially fit. And I found it to be a really good fit. I really enjoyed volunteering, and I really enjoyed all of the biology classes. And even though it was weird that I was coming from engineering, I sort of used that non-traditional background to my advantage. Not many other people can regale med school interviewers with tales of being on an oil rig at 4 in the morning. And I really just sort of took the essence of everything I had done, all of those really diverse experiences, and figured out what was really at the core of them that had really prepare me for medicine. Even something as disparate as engineering or as disparate as management consulting can teach you things to prepare you for something in the future. And of course, being a Schulich leader, I think, really helped a lot. It gave me something else that helped my application stand out and make people notice me just a little bit more, which in something as competitive as getting into med school, every little edge really does help. So after all of that and a very, very long application cycle, I got accepted to 5 different schools, and like I said before, I'll be going to UBC in the fall to study medicine, so that's very exciting. And yeah, so I'll give this back to Ioana, and that's just a little bit about me.
Thank you, Julie, and actually thank you everyone who presented. As far as we can see, all of the graduating class loves research and experiencing new things and getting involved, and none of them likes to sit down and do a desk job, so everyone has this in common. I guess now we could go to the questions you guys, the public, has, and if not so, well, there's still plenty to discuss with our 4 panelists. So I think we already had a question that I saw, but it is no longer there. See, the person who had it left. So if you have any questions, just raise the hand. It's on the left side of your screen. And well, meanwhile, while I get the questions, I would be interested in hearing all of you guys how you go about making tough decisions, because every single person who spoke tonight said changed either pathways from something as going from engineering to medicine, or moving from a province to another. So how do you go about making these decisions? Julie and Terry specifically, could you speak about that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Actually, I had a slide about advice, and that's sort of one of them. So I'll just go back to that. Let's see. There we go. Actually, I think these are the 3 pieces of advice I was thinking of giving later. And the question you just asked sort of is in connection with them. I think in terms of decision making, for me, when it came to what I chose to study at university, the sort of summer jobs and internships I chose, my choice of graduate school, I think, I mean, this may sound a bit trite, but I think the most important thing is to go back and ask yourself, what's important to me? You know, what are my values? Not just, you know, oh, what do I feel good doing? What looks like fun? But what is important to me? And I think that my second point I put here was about having opportunities versus being opportunistic. And I think it really goes into that, because if you're you know, we all have many opportunities available to us, but when we have to make a decision between what is available, I think that the most important thing is to just, I guess, for anyway, in my case, it's just to go back and wonder, not what looks the most impressive, what looks the most fun, but what seems to be the most valuable to me? Which of the options feels like I'm contributing my best to a cause I believe is important? And even with the smallest decisions, you know, like as Julie was saying, different volunteering opportunities, it really boils down to that too. Because if you go to one of these you know, fairs at the beginning of the school year and there's hundreds of student organizations, there's really so many things you can do. But even then, you can already ask yourself, you know, what do I think is important? So that's why I guess that's sort of my starting point when I like to when I have an important decision to make.
Thank you very much, Terry. Julie, would you have anything to add before we go to our the questions?
I mean, I think Terry pretty much covered a lot of the main points. For me, what I really like is when it's a major decision to discuss with people close to me, family or friends. But at the end of the day, you do sort of just have to know yourself, and you have to see, I think, what makes you happy, especially with universities. Like Terry said, there's so much to do, and you only have a limited amount of time. And I really do encourage people to try a lot of things, especially in first year. But at some point, you have to really pare it down, and you have to figure out, of these experiences makes me happy, and which ones am I just doing because, oh, maybe it looks good. Because if you're passionate about something and it makes you happy, you can talk about it for ages during interviews, you can write essays about it, and just sort of become so much more of a valuable experience.
Thank you very much, Julie. Let's go to Mary Kathleen's question. Can you speak, Mary? Yeah. How about now? Can you ask us, do you hear us? Oh, can we hear you? That's the question. David, can you help?
Yeah, trying to unmute Mary Kathleen. Can't seem to do it, but why don't we go to the written questions? Ben's next, and maybe if Mary Kathleen can write in her question. We'll take that after Ben.
All right, so Ben was asking if any of you participated in internships during the school year, and how do these fit with your busy schedules, with the Schulich Leaders busy schedule kind of type? Maybe Lance can answer. Did any of you guys do something during the year, internships?
I have an opinion on the question, but I didn't do an internship myself. I think that to go through school, everyone needs something you need to do outside of school, like a hobby, something to not necessarily fill spare time, but to make time for, because it's really important to be doing other things. It's very relaxing and helps you get through school. So I didn't do an internship or anything during school. However, I did keep very busy with other hobbies of my own. One hobby was robotics, although I know it's still rather academic, but also other hobbies. Like I played a lot of sports in school. Although really busy with electrical engineering, it was still well worth the time, because I figured the more sports I played and the more active I was, doing school became a lot easier. So if I, played a few hours of basketball a week, I was able to do even more hours in homework. Like, it was almost like a good trade-off. Lately I picked up, well, I was exercising quite a bit, but I was just working out in the gym, but then I wanted to get more competitive, so I joined CrossFit just to actually get competitive with it again. I just went to a competition in Portland for that. And in saying all that, I think it's because you won the Schulich Leaders Scholarship, you probably don't really need the money. I would recommend finding a hobby instead of finding an internship to do during the year.
Thank you, Len. And Mary Kathleen was asking earlier today, find the question. How did the scholarship help you meet other leaders from across the country? Have you found meeting networking during the program? Well, actually, we do have some meeting opportunities during the program. At each university, we meet with the leaders of our own university. Can you guys speak of your experiences of meeting, maybe Cassandra can speak about this, about how it was to meet the other leaders?
Yeah, it's been interesting. The Schulich leader at UBC, who came also in 2012, she was also in biology, and sometimes we would meet and discuss our projects and what we were working on. But in terms of meeting the Schulich leaders through all the different sort of generations or all the different years, it's been a bit difficult, I've found. We met once or twice for dinner, and it was very inspiring to hear what everyone's involved with, but it would be very interesting to find a way sort of like this to connect across the country in more detail.
And Cassandra, can you also go about talking what made you decide to pursue graduate studies? This is all of our 4 panelists will be pursuing master's studies, so that's very interesting.
I guess for me, graduate school seems sort of obvious because I love doing research. I can spend hours and hours trying to figure something out or program something. And for me, I guess the difficulty is trying to blend something theoretical with something related to the outdoors. So trying to fit math and ecology together is difficult, but I certainly want to study something where I can research and try to figure out solutions to difficult problems. And one of the only ways I can continue learning is to go to graduate school and try to come up with research projects.
Lance, what's your take on this?
I have a slightly different take, actually. Just in my field in engineering, I feel that even if I did go straight to the workforce, I would still, assuming I got the job I wanted, I would still be solving problems and still constantly be learning. But the reason I went to grad studies, there's a couple main reasons. The one is I just really like school, and even when I'm done working 4 months during the summer, I'm always ready to come back to school. So I was just kind of a sign that maybe I shouldn't be done. But then also I looked around for possible graduate studies opportunities, and there's an opportunity with one of my favorite professors doing research in my most favorite field, like digital signal processing, one of my favorite classes. So I had the opportunity, and I wanted to stay in school, and then I applied for Internships scholarships and got research grants. I'm sure having this Schulich Leader scholarship on my resume definitely helped with that. So all those stars aligned, and it just made sense to do graduate studies.
Great, thank you. And Julie, you're getting some of your questions for you. You are getting asked how you, and actually for all of the leaders who are away from home, how do you deal with the distance? And there's someone else who is from Vancouver and will be studying at McGill. And also, what field of medicine would you be interested in the future?
Okay, so 2 questions, if I heard correctly. First one being how do I feel about being in Montreal when I'm originally from Vancouver? For me, I think one of the best parts about McGill is Montreal as a city. It's so different from Vancouver. I like to joke that it's almost like studying in Europe without actually having to fly to Europe to study. But admittedly, it can be a little bit hard to keep in touch with people back home because there is that 3-hour time zone difference. I do try to go back home a little bit sort of for Christmas and for holidays and stuff like that. But admittedly, you know, in the summer you get busy doing internships and research, and that doesn't really happen as often as you like. So I think a big part of it is just sort of setting aside time for phone calls, I think, makes a big difference to just keep in touch with people you want to keep in touch and back home. But I think in terms of going to a different city, it's a little bit scary at first, but there's a lot of really cool opportunities. I started discovering the food scene in Montreal and really haven't looked back since. And I just guess super quickly, the second question was what type of medicine I'd be interested in going into and specializing in. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I'm thinking maybe surgery, because there's something to be said about surgery being the most applied type of medicine, really working with your hands, and that appeals to the engineer in me. But I think one of the best parts about med school is the fact that you get exposed to so much, and you get to sort of shadow all these different doctors and try all these different things, that I'd be remiss in setting my mind on a specialty when there's really so much out there that I don't even know about yet.
Great, thank you. And well, I'm sure I'm also in med school, and you will change your mind every 2 seconds. Like, it's so hard to make a decision. And for those interested in going in med school, I think the best way to go about it is to keep your mind open. You will be surprised what you discover that you like. Also, another question that is coming often in our Q&A is, how do you guys find all of the opportunities you do, and how did you find your place in your university? Did you feel you had to start all over when you moved from your hometown to university, or just a transition from high school to university? Did it feel like you were starting from zero, all of your involvement in extracurriculars? Cassandra, maybe you can go first, and then we can hear everyone.
Yeah, for me, it was interesting. I know I think I got very lucky with the different opportunities that I ran into, but certainly talking to people and getting to know people, and even if you think something maybe doesn't fit you, following through with different things that come up and just trying to be interested in things, that can lead to a lot of interesting opportunities that you might not have expected. And in terms of working, yeah, I guess following through with those opportunities, because usually things lead to other ideas.
Terry?
Yes, I think I did have to start over completely, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the process of finding new mentors, finding new sources of inspiration really helps us grow into the people we're meant to be. And you know, growing up in a small town, I knew from a very early age that I needed to leave if I wanted to do anything other than farming or work in the natural gas industry. And so I appreciate the opportunity of being able to go home and visit my parents, visit friends there. But I find my life has really become in Quebec now. This is really home to me now, and I think it's I think it's a good thing to be able to, or to have to sort of start over again, because every time you start, it's like this when you go traveling, where you go on an exchange, but just on a shorter time frame. I think every time you move and start a part of your life over again, you recognize what's the most important to you, because those are the things that you take with you, and so it hasn't changed completely who I am, but I think it's just given me a better idea of what I wanted to do with my life, who I think I am, who I want to be.
Thank you. And Lance spoke extensively about giving, about his advice being getting as involved as possible, and about taking the opportunities and doing extracurriculars. How did you follow up on your networking opportunities, Lance? How did you make them happen? if you have any advice to give about that.
Yeah, actually, the one biggest thing for me, especially starting university in a new city, was not only you had to force yourself to not only not be afraid to meet new people, but actually force yourself to meet new people, as in initiate conversations with people and actually make a point to remember someone. I mean, it's one thing to say hi, introduce yourself, and forget about the person, but next time you see that person, you should go talk to them again, and that's how you really form contacts. And that was my biggest way of building myself up again in university, coming out of high school and meeting people and really getting my life kick-started again.
Thank you. And Julie?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everything's been said. You really do have to just meet new people, especially moving to another city. Just see if there are certain groups that you're interested in, sometimes there are opportunities that way, or you talk to people who have similar interests in you. Sometimes you just talk to people who know someone who knows another program that's going on, and honestly, I just think just keep your eyes peeled. The great thing about university is you can stumble upon some crazy things. I've stumbled upon talks by people I've really admired, just being like, oh, there's a talk tomorrow. Or volunteer opportunities also sort of just come across and land in your lap, and you just have to make sure you're ready and able to receive them.
Thank you. And Schulich leaders seem to have very busy, and we do have very busy lives. Do you have any methods to keep track of your time assignments or of your tasks, or how do you manage it all? Schulich?
For me, I guess one of the biggest things is I always recommend everyone have a Google Calendar. Google Calendars are the greatest, and you should put everything in there, because if it's in your Google Calendar, it's not in your brain, which is nice. But for engineering especially, I think it's quite important to have friends you can study with. A lot of engineering work is group work, and I find that everyone has a different studying style, and you have to figure out what study style works best for you. But for me, having people I can toss concepts off of and teach stuff to and learn stuff from, I think also helps. And also just having friends who inspire me to study even harder, because they're always working or they're always doing something really cool, I think is really helpful.
And maybe Cassandra, who really has a different, well, not a different perspective, but who really likes being on site. Do you have any other methods?
Well, I was going to say that it becomes very difficult when you don't have internet to keep track of things, or harder to keep track of things, especially time. But I usually make lists. I guess it's sort of a simple thing, but you slowly check off the things that you've done, and you know you've done them then. And I think it's also very good advice to find groups to work with, because people remind you of things, and they'll teach you different ways to study and different ways to look at ideas. So if you can find people who think similarly to you to work with, that's very, very helpful.
Thank you. And for aspiring med students, how do you make your applications shine, and how do you go about finding the different this question is directed to Julie, I think. How do you go about making it look non-traditional or making it stand out?
I think there's no one way to make it stand out. I think the fact that, we're all Schulich leaders means that we already like to get involved and like to get busy, as we've seen so far. But I think it's always just important to make sure that you get involved in something that you're interested in. There's no one right extracurricular to get into med school, I think. Yes, volunteering at a hospital helps, but the only reason that helps is because, being in a hospital environment shows you what it's like to be a doctor. There are many other ways to do that, and there are many different types of hospital volunteering. I think in general, just get involved and make sure that you're involved in something you're passionate about. And I think everyone has that something a little bit different that sort of makes their application stand out. Like my best friend, who also got into medicine, she's on the Quidditch team at our school. And so that made her application stand out, I can tell you that much. So everyone has their own way, and I think there's no one right way. I think the best part about university is, again, there's so many opportunities. Find something that interests you, and then just, I think, make sure you get all those deep in it.
And Lance and Terry, is it the same for applications for grad school in engineering?
For engineering, at least my application for grad school, it was, I don't want to say done for me, but if you find for me, it was more about finding a professor in a project. And as soon as I found that professor and they wanted to work with me, the professor pretty much took care of my application for me, so it really wasn't an issue. So I guess that's the biggest thing for me. Find a professor who wants to work with you and you want to work with him or her.
So it goes back to networking.
Yes, always. All about who you know.
Terry?
Yes, I think this is actually one of the last questions is sort of that was just posted, sort of had to do with this too. I think for grad school in science or internships or whatever, the trick is just to meet with your professors and even the ones who've taught you courses. If you're a good student, even if you've never spoken to them face to face, unless you're in a huge class of 300 kids, if there's if you're a smaller class, you have good marks, and you go and speak with your professor, there's a good chance they'll recognize you. And for example, the professor I'm doing my master's with now, I had sent him 2 emails saying I was interested in doing an internship in his lab, and he never responded to me. And I went to his office maybe half a dozen times, and he was always out of the country. And eventually what I did, I wasn't even sure what this guy looked like. I just knew about him. So I found a picture of him on the internet. And then I just found him walking down the hallway one day in the department, and I stopped him. I said, "Excuse me, are you so-and-so?" He said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Oh, I sent you some emails. I was wondering if I could work in your lab." He said, "Oh, that was you." He said, "Well, come to my lab. Let's talk." And so this is the guy who didn't respond to any of my emails. And then I went to his office, and we talked for 2 hours, and I missed one of my classes. And to be honest, I think this fellow had never taught me a class before. And I think just the fact of, meeting him face to face and showing him, that despite the fact he doesn't know me, I was happy to go out and meet him and get to know him. That was really what got the ball rolling. And I wouldn't be able to say that a professor did my application for me, but once you have that connection with a professor, they're going to write you good reference letters, and they're going to look out for good scholarships for you as well, and good opportunities as well at the graduate school level.
Good, and congratulations on insisting.
Well, I'm happy I did in the end.
Yeah. If you guys have any other questions, maybe you can send the last one quickly, and meanwhile, I will ask our panelists if they have any words of advice condensed for the future or any future plans, what is exciting for them, and we will go our separate ways.
I have a little piece of advice.
Go ahead.
I think especially this is for new starting Schulich Leaders who are going into university. When I was finishing high school, I was getting so stressed out about what I wanted to study. I had no idea. I mean, I sort of had an idea of how I wanted to live my life, but really not how I go about it and what I'd end up studying or where I'd end up going. And I think the most important thing that I realized by the end of my degree is that your undergraduate degree is by no means the end of the world. If you choose something you're interested in and you devote yourself to it and you enjoy it, that's by far enough. And because that allows you to go and do something completely different after. You can switch fields completely, go into a different master's program, go into medical school. You can go and do another undergraduate degree. I mean, there's no shame in that. So don't think that starting a new university program that you're not entirely sure about is going to determine the rest of your life. And don't be afraid to change either. Don't be afraid to take a year off, to switch programs after a certain degree. That's my most important piece of advice. When you're deciding university at the end of high school, you're not determining the next 50 years of your life. You're just determining the next 4 or 5.
How about Cassandra?
Yeah, I would have very similar advice, I think. I think the things I learned the most through my university education were by sort of not going the traditional route. I jumped around from math to forestry to biology, and it gave me a very interesting perspective on all the courses that I took. And now I'm stepping away from university and seeing how much I know about all these different fields, which is very, very helpful for doing research because you have these different perspectives on how to solve problems. think that's sort of similar for everyone here, actually. They did different things and they're applying it to new ideas. But overall, I'd just say kind of take chances. Maybe don't do the traditional route. Do whatever you love and follow it, because eventually it'll lead you to very interesting things.
Lance, how's the future looking for you?
I don't really know. The future is still a mystery. I'm going to piggyback somewhat on Cassandra said. With that, you have to find something that you're passionate in and do it. One thing, I took a set of classes that I wasn't so much passionate in, but I thought would be useful, and I hated them and didn't do well. But the classes that I was passionate in, I did very well, and that's what I'm continuing to do today. So make sure you find what you're passionate in, whether you think it's applicable or not, do it, and you'll go down a good path eventually, and find a use for it.
Thank you. And Julie.
Going last always means that everything's already been said. But yeah, I think pretty much what everyone said, be passionate. I think it's important always to just keep your eyes open and be open to other opportunities, even if they're maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone. They're not something you're very prepared for. You never know which ones might just click, which ones might just strike a chord. On a very practical note, office hours for professors are the greatest things. Please go to them. Everyone says that, and everyone's like, oh, I'll go to them eventually. No, go to your professor's office hours. They're great. But just, I think, keep an eye open for opportunities, network. In general, just, I think, have a fun time at undergrad, and don't necessarily take it that seriously. If anything happens, if you make a mistake, you just get up, brush yourself off, and keep on going.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone who shared these pieces of advice and talked about their path. Actually, I hope it was inspiring for everyone who is listening, and that's what the leader talks about, helping us connect and maybe seeing what other people are doing, getting some tips for success. And I would like to thank David and the foundation, Mr. Schulich, of course, for the scholarship, for helping us have these kind of talks, webinars, which just open us to more exposure and more knowledge about ourselves and our fellow leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks, Ioana.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Am I still here?
Yes,
I
you
hear
are.
you.